Warren Thomas, who you're the ship man, he's the bridge man. You test bridges. What would you be looking for? What are the issues when you know this bridge?
Well, looking at the bridge, there seemed to be no design for impact protection. So
what does that mean?
Effectively, the very slender columns that supported the bridge had no protection to, I think it's 100,000 ton ship that hit them. They would break through them like matchsticks. What we have certainly in the UK, and certainly more modern structures, would have protection around them to divert or actually stop.
When you say protection, what are you talking about?
The Dartford River crossing,
yep.
The piers there are quite small, but they sit down on a pile cap of concrete that's the size of a tennis court. So the ship would hit that before it would actually hit the piers. And
this bridge was a very long bridge. It
Yes.
didn't have those. Did that make it even more vulnerable, the length of the bridge?
Yeah, I mean, what happens nowadays is there's a certain amount of redundancy built into bridges.
What does that mean?
Well, effectively, things can fail and the bridge won't collapse.
Right.
A classic example of another bridge that had no redundancy was the Genoa Bridge that fell down a few years ago. We build bridges with very high percentages of redundancy in them in the UK, right. Which isn't obviously the case for them.
Now, you heard President Biden say, essentially, whatever it takes, federal government will fix this. In your professional opinion, should that bridge just be repaired, or it's 50 years old, there's a massive amount more of container loads going under it. Does it need to just be redesigned? Well,
the main span that was the part that mainly collapsed was 360 metres long. So that's going to have to be rebuilt. They may be able to use the side spans, but modern day construction will probably, I would have said, and I'm not an expert on that, but I don't think they'll be replacing it with a like for like. It'll be something new.
I wonder, Warren, if you think there are lessons for bridge building going forward now, both abroad but also in the UK.
Yeah, certainly I think the US will look at the standards of the bridges that have been built back in the 70s through to the 80s and 90s, because there are new standards that we're now building to now, and I think they're going to have to revisit and potentially look to protect a lot more of these columns that are in the rivers and estuaries in the US, and I'm sure that will affect the Department of Transport here and their effect on what we do with bridges.
And you just heard from John about the diverting of funds to deal with other things, and also the kind of people that are actually looking after these army, military and so forth. Are we going to need around the world? I mean, there's a bridge in Thailand that's 34 miles long. Are we going to need much more constant attention to engineering as we move forward, and we're managing and moving stuff in a different way?
The biggest problem we have is the assets, and America is a fine example. The assets that we're looking at and the bridges are getting older and older and have to be looked at. We, fortunately, in the UK, do have a reasonably robust inspection, testing and then remedial and repair system. That needs to be rolled out onto the bridges that are now coming to the end of their lifespan.
Thank you all very much for joining us.